host, Albert Apache, and as always, brought to you by Open Source Self-Defense, Fitness, and Grappling. Alright guys, some red pill moments. We're going to be jam-packed full of red pill moments this show. So, first we're going to start off talking about, of course, shopping safety. Again, some red pill moments here. There's going to be some people who get extremely upset. They're going to get really hurt with me. They're going to whine and cry, particularly probably people who train quote-unquote reality-based or tactical self-defense. Okay, how about some common sense self-defense? All right. So let's start off first and foremost with let's bust some myths, okay, when it comes to self-defense. So first and foremost, you're not trying to win a fight in a self-defense scenario. What you're trying to do is survive and escape with as little bit of damage to yourself as possible. That's what the goals are, or at least that's what the goal should be. My goal is not to maim them. My goal is not to break their thumbs or their fingers or gouge their eyeballs out or kick them in the groin, right? That's not my goal, okay? Another myth. Anybody who's selling you this holiday season that you can come in and take their 2-hour course and you're self-defense ready is selling you a bunch of malarkey, okay? There's nothing that can replace actual legitimate training. Just nothing. There's nothing that replaces it. You have to train, okay? Now, what we can do is give you some tips and ideas and concepts that you may want to follow that are very common sense, okay? So let's first start off with who the bad guy is going to be. So again, red pill moment here. The bad guy is not going to be, Freddy Krueger. The bad guy is not going to be Jason Voorhees, right? The bad guy is not going to be Hannibal Lecter, okay? They're not super geniuses and, impervious to pain or, any of these kind of nonsensical things that so many of these tactical and reality-based instructors want to sell you, okay? That's most likely not what you're going to run into. Secondly, what I'm talking about right now is shopping safety. In other words, you have to understand who your attacker is or what the scenario is. We're not talking right now about somebody who's trying to abduct you, okay? We're talking about somebody who's approaching you to take your stuff. First and foremost, your stuff is not more valuable than you, your life, your children's lives, or your livelihood. In other words, you don't want to take damage unnecessarily that's going to keep you out of work, okay? What these bad guys really want is just your stuff. That's it. They just want your stuff. So here's the reality. If somebody approaches you and they brandish a weapon, okay, whether it be a knife or a firearm or anything else, baseball bat, club, whatever, that means they don't want to harm you. The whole reason why you would attack somebody with a knife is because you can have the surprise ambush attack. You can conceal it up until the moment you close that distance, and then you go sewing machine on them, right? Stab, 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 gouge, gash, gash, gouge, 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 and it's over, right? I mean, if you've never watched a prison movie before, maybe you need to start watching them, because that's more likely how a knife attack goes, okay? Generally speaking, a guy does not brandish a knife and then waits for you to pull out your taser and blah, blah, blah if he's actually trying to stab you. He's using the knife as a intimidation tactic, or he's using the firearm as an intimidation tactic. He doesn't want to have to hurt you. Now, that's not to say that they won't hurt you. That's saying that they don't want to have to. They don't want the complication. They would prefer to take your stuff, okay? So, a couple of ideas you can use. Number one, do not over carry in your hands, okay? I know it seems faster, I know it's a busy season, but you need to keep your hands free. You don't have to carry everything in your hands and get out to your car. I know it seems quicker, but in all reality, it really is not that much quicker. You're maybe saving 3 to 7 seconds carrying everything in your hands rather than using a cart. Okay, so use that cart. Secondly, the cart also acts as a buffer. Okay, it can act as a buffer between you and them, keeping that distance. And that's the first tactic you really want to consider is manage the distance between you and the thief. Okay, try to keep a good distance between you and them. A shopping cart does that very effectively. Okay, next, you put your stuff in the shopping cart. Now, guess what? You have a buffer and your hands are free. Next, very common sense. You try to shop in a group. Try not to shop by yourself. Okay? I know sometimes it's hard because maybe the person you're shopping for is with you. I understand that. Make adjustments. Okay? Take the time. Plan ahead. If you can't plan ahead, at least use some common sense, such as if you're buying a big item, okay, most stores offer help to carry things out or to put them into your vehicle. Okay, use that. Don't be proud. Say, okay, yes, I can use a hand. Even if you're strong enough and capable enough, men and tough women, right? Women that lift, listen, it's not about your ego. It's not that you need help carrying it. It's that you are increasing your numbers by having more than one person. You are much less likely to be robbed or mugged when you have other people with you. It's just that simple. Secondly, okay, you can walk out to your car, wait until you see other shoppers walking to their car. Then proceed out. Because at least if there's other people in the parking lot, you now have the ability to shout for help. That isn't going to be 100% effective, but it's something, okay? It's something. Lastly, always ask, especially if you have a number of items, always ask, can I just pull my car up? Can I leave this stuff here at the counter and pull my car up to load it? Most of the time, most stores are going to say, absolutely, you can do that. They might even give you a employee to watch your stuff and help you load it into your vehicle. You pull your car up to the front, you load your stuff into your vehicle. Okay, so that's tactics as far as the actual walk out to your car, shopping safety. Okay, this is legitimate common sense things that you can do. Okay, it doesn't take any gouging of eyeballs or being aware of your surroundings and all this mystical mumbo jumbo. Okay, common sense. Next, as far as keeping your stuff safe, well, you continue shopping because many of us go from one store to another store to another store to shop. One of the little ways that these criminals like to target you is they wait to watch you shop. They're in the store. They watch you go to your vehicle. They then follow you to your next stop. And then while you go into that store, they break into your car and take your stuff. So optimally, the best strategy here is clearly to drive home and put your stuff away in your house. Of course, being aware that, hey, there's some car following me home, right? If you take a left, they take a left. You take a right, they take a right. And all of a sudden, they follow you all the way to your house. You should be noticing that, right? But let's just for say that, you did. So taking your stuff home in between shopping stops is the best idea. However, because of practicality, we know that that's not always a viable option for us. So the next thing you want to do is, of course, park as close to the store as you can, where the most amount of foot traffic is at. And if you're putting your stuff in the trunk or in the back of the vehicle in the cargo area for SUVs, you want to back into your parking spot, particularly if there are other cars on the other side or some type of sidewalk or maybe a light pole right behind you. Why? Because what these guys like to do is wait till you go into the store, bust open your windows or bust open your door, take your stuff and go. If your stuff is in your cargo area and it's facing out towards where cars are, it makes it a very easy target. And if there's one thing we understand about thieves is they want the easy target. Okay? Now, these things are not foolproof. Okay? There's no such thing in the world of criminal or crime prevention. There is no such thing as 100% foolproof. Okay? But you reduce your risk by being a hard target. Okay? And lastly, okay, if you do carry a weapon, whether it be a knife, a taser, a pepper spray, a firearm, okay, whatever you carry, make sure you're trained with it and make sure it's accessible. Going all the way back to that idea of having your hands free. It makes absolutely no sense to have your hands tied up and carry a firearm or carry a knife or carry pepper spray or carry a taser. How are you going to get to it? How are you going to draw it out? You can't if your hands are weighed down by all your bags. Last tactic for you guys, okay? Use some bait. What do I mean by this? Well, maybe invest in a little billfold or a couple of ones, maybe a 5, wrap it around one of those fake credit cards you get in the mail, put a rubber band around it, carry it with you during the shopping season. When they approach you, if they approach you in person, it's something you can throw in one direction while you run the other direction. Tell them that you shop with Google Pay or you shop with a mobile credit card on your phone, on your smartphone. Okay? Toss your phone to them. Say, here it is. Maybe carry your ID and your primary debit card or primary credit card in your phone case. Generally speaking, you can pop your phone out, fit your stuff in there, behind there, clamp it shut. That way you can throw your wallet or you can throw your purse at them, and yeah, they maybe get away with some stuff that's valuable, some stuff that you're going to have to replace, but at least you have your primary things that you need on a day-to-day basis. Because really, that's the pain in the butt, right? The pain in the butt is what disruption they cause to your day-to-day life, right? All right, guys. So I hope, that made some sense. I know that might not be what people were thinking I was going to talk about as far as shopping safety during the holidays. Look, guys, the reality is that you need to get in somewhere to train self-defense. That's the reality. Everybody knows you've been saying that you're going to do it for years and years. Everybody says that they're going to do it for years and years, and they never do. And it's really similar to lifting weight, right? It's really similar to going on a weight loss journey, right? It's very similar, okay? You're not going to have your weigh in tomorrow. You're not going to be ready for the street tomorrow. You're not going to drop 20 pounds by tomorrow. It's a process, okay, of getting ready. All right, guys, that's it. Hold on to your shorts. We're going to jump right into another red pill moment because I have to talk about the Adrain Peterson story. Okay, guys, so red pill alert, red pill alert. If you don't like strong fathers and the idea that fathers can love, you probably want to go ahead and skip this portion of the program. So here it goes. Basically, Adrain Peterson admitted to a reporter he thought he was off the record, but clearly you're never off the record with a reporter, which is just another reason why I have a lack of respect for the media, because they will lie to your face and tell you, yes, off the record, and then turn around and report exactly what they told you was off the record. Now, those of you who may not know me personally, may not know my entire story, but that being said, fathers and strong fathers being in the home
and strong fathers being able to parent and love their children is a cause which is near and dear to my heart. So you have a number of stories. First off, we're going to kind of take a look at this one at fatherly.com. Basically, it goes into, what had happened and what was said. And he basically told the Bleacher Reporter, I had to discipline my son and spank him the other day with a belt. And that was the portion that he thought was off the record that clearly was not. And goes on to talk about, Peterson being charged with child abuse in 2014. He went on to say also that the reporter did report that, Peterson did say that he uses other means now to discipline, including timeouts, things of that nature. Now, this is where I have an issue with many of these stories. They all want to put their slant that's not just reporting news, right? It's not just journalism. So earlier this year, the American Academy of Pediatrics, an organization of 67,000 pediatricians dedicated to child well-being, released its new guidelines on spanking, claiming the act of spanking or hitting a child is an adverse disciplinary strategy. Well, first of all, who are these 67,000 pediatricians? And you know what? No, thank you. Okay? No, thank you. Where are the reports from? I have to believe there are other pediatricians that believe that it's perfectly appropriate to spank your child. Okay? 67,000 pediatricians can't be the only pediatricians in the entire nation. We kind of have more of the same at the Daily Mail, basically going through how Adrain Peterson admitted to still using a belt on his son. It goes through him being charged. Okay, they're a little bit more fair, I guess, in this one. But, it just seems that a lot of these stories leave out this particular end, right? So it says a grand jury held that summer declined to charge him. So what does that mean? Okay, that means that a grand jury of his peers, in other words, other adults, other responsible adults, felt as though there was not enough there to pursue an indictment. Now, what happened is another one was impaneled so that they could get the decision they wanted. So basically, the prosecutor didn't get what he wanted, so he found a way around the law. Basically, he fiddled with the law to get an indictment. Pretty sad, if you ask me. Clearly, the initial grand jury felt that parenting should be left to parents. Next, we have the USA Today. Basically goes through exactly the same, story. Adds a little bit more early on about, he didn't allow that suspension and all the things that came from that suspension to change him. He also goes on to say that he avoids using switches or belts 9 out of 10 times, and that he only uses it in the event that, a child needs to, or a child has repeatedly been offensive or offended against a particular rule, right? And then we have Pro Football Talk. This one basically goes through the same thing. What I don't like is that over and over and over, they don't necessarily want to give an opposing view. They always want to talk about all the people and quote unquote experts that disagree with spanking. And what they're doing by doing that is basically saying that, well, if you disagree, you're on the wrong side of the experts. Where to me, I would rather listen to a panel of parents of kids that were successful in life. Okay? I'm not saying that all kids are the same. As a matter of fact, all kids are not the same. Not every parenting strategy works for every child. Now, the one that probably bothered me the most was, I don't know, I want to say it was the Washington Post. Washington Post, bothered me the most because there's a point in, I believe it's Des Beeler. I don't know who that is. I've never heard of him before besides coming across the story here. But they go through, they report the story, and, that he claimed, right? He claimed, I'm comfortable knowing that every time I go home, my boys run to me and hug me, and they say, hi, Daddy, and every time they want something, they know who to come to. They know who's going to be yes. All my kids know that. Okay? He also goes on, and I believe in this story, they also talk about how he claims to love his children. Now, what is the insinuation there? Okay. What is this insinuation that when you say, well, he claims to love his children? Okay. Not that he says, not that he states. See, words mean things, people. And I know in our society today, in the, oh my gosh, the quote unquote media is under attack, let's protect them, they're an endangered species BS. The reality is that words mean things. And these reporters are very well educated, and they know damn good and well that words mean things. They understand how to write in such a way that is a suggestive manner, and whether or not it's overtly. And so what they're suggesting when they say that Adrain Peterson claims to love his children, what they're saying is that he's giving it lip service, or it's just a claim. It's not really how he feels or how he states or what he really believes or what he really feels. They're trying to create doubt in the reader's mind that Adrain Peterson loves his children. Because if he loved his children, why would he do such a horrible thing? Now, I was pretty heated on Thanksgiving Day when I first talked about this. I'm still heated. I am sick and tired as a father and as a father of, basically a person of color, right? Being somebody of color, Native American, half Mexican, that all I ever see is this, and all I ever hear about, and especially from minority women, okay, about how we're a bunch of deadbeat dads, how we're not showing up in our kids' lives. Yet when we have a strong, successful, loving father doing the right thing by his children, in other words, doing the hard work of parenting, because to be honest, right, being Uncle Daddy, the daddy that isn't allowed to be a real parent because, he only gets to see his kids every other weekend and every other holiday because some vitriolic, over-the-top drama queen female won't allow him to actually see his child, right? Well, Uncle Daddy is an easy role to play. And the reason why it's an easy role to play is because you can always be their buddy and you can always be their friend. And your Uncle Daddy, you just get to play Uncle Daddy. Okay? You don't have to make any of the hard choices. You don't have to be there and see the look of disappointment. You don't have to be the bad guy. See, the reality is that being the bad guy with your kids is actually the truest form of love that you can show for your children. Saying no, laying down the law, executing the discipline, okay, that's the tough part of being a parent. The easy part is being liked. It's easy to be liked by a kid. Any pedophile can tell you that. It's easy to be liked by a kid. Offer them candy. Let them pet a puppy. Right? It's easy to be liked by a child. What's hard is when your own flesh and blood looks at you completely disappointed and completely sad, and they are crying real tears from emotional or physical pain that you may have caused from saying no, because in their mind, in their little tiny non-rational mind, you are being unfair. You are just a big meanie. They have no idea why it's not okay to put their hand on the stove. They have no idea why they can't eat candy from morning till dusk. They have no idea why you set limits on their electronics. You know, I was so upset listening to Shannon Sharp that, you know, when he was talking about it on Thanksgiving morning, that I had to see what other people had to say about it. And I came across a old video archive of Chris Carter going off, and he was, of course, on the opposite side, as you all might guess. And he talked about how Mama taught me a lot of things, but Mama was wrong. No, Mama was right in that instance. If she was whooping you, Mama was right. And because here's the long and short of it. Physical force to force compliance is a rule of nature, plain and simple. And it's a rule of our society. Don't believe me? Go start breaking laws right now. And we'll see if the police use force or not to get you to comply. Get into prison and start breaking the rules in prison. And we'll see if the guards or the other inmates start to use force to get you to comply. See, because at the end of the day, when you draw a boundary and somebody continuously tests that boundary, basically what it is, it's the equivalent of somebody telling you, or else what? Some of these people are completely out of touch. They'll talk about taking away electronics, take away the internet. Really, how out of touch are you? I want to know, how out of touch are you? My 7-year-old doesn't have electronics. Excuse me. He just got an iPod, which sits in my room most of the time. What? Take away electronics? You think that I'm the only person that has access to electronics? You think he doesn't have friends at school? Let's go up an age bracket. Let's get into, that's elementary school. Let's get into middle school or junior high, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. You think that his friends aren't slipping him his old iPod or his old smartphone? Are you seriously kidding me right now? I mean, these people are so out of touch. It makes me wonder if they even parent their own children, or does a nanny do it? Because it seems as though it's only rich, liberal people, rich, wealthy, liberal people that tend to tell me how to parent. They claim that they want to be inclusive with my culture and where I grew up, and that they understand my plight, but they don't act that way and they don't follow through. Leave parenting to me. And you know what? It does upset me beyond belief that all we ever do is tear down men. We talk about the fatherless homes in the black community. And Adrain Peterson, a young father doing the hard work of parenting, who's willing to be disliked by his child in order to make sure that that child is liked by his peers and his society because he's productive and he knows how to follow the rules, because he's not a spoiled brat. Okay? Black man doing the right things. We're going to throw him to the wolves. That's who we're going to crucify. It's utterly ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. I don't know what else to say. It's fake. It's fake compassion for the fatherless epidemic that is going on in our minority households. It's false compassion. Because everybody should be applauding Adrain Peterson right now. Because he's doing the hard work of being a parent. He's not just giving them all the fancy stuff and buying all the nice things and then sending them home to mom to playing Uncle Daddy and sending them home to mom to do the hard work. No, he's going ahead and he's owning up to his responsibility as a father. Because in essence, that's what fatherhood is. It's responsibility. It's responsibility for the children to teach them right from wrong in a masculine way, from a masculine point of view. They need that balance. More so now than ever. And I know that's not a popular thing to say, but it's the truth. Now, if he whooped his son and people don't like it, oh well. Seriously. People tend to forget that Adrain Peterson also lost a child. He lost a child to actual child abuse. Actual child abuse. Not spanking because the kid was being disobedient. Actual beat to death. So don't come over here telling me that you want to call Adrain Peterson a child abuser. Because you have no idea what that term means. Until you've seen a child, or you've been that child, that's been picked up by their throat, or picked up by their hair, tossed across the room, or kicked across a hardwood floor, used like a dust mop, don't come over here telling me you know what child abuse is. Don't come over here and tell me that some welts left from a belt, or a hand, or a switch is child abuse. Welts left on the back of the leg or the butt is child abuse. When a kid has a cracked skull, when a kid has an arm that's out of socket from being picked up by their arm and tossed around like a rag doll, then you come talk to me. When they have internal injuries to their abdomen and their internal organs, then we can talk. But don't come to me with welts on their butt and welts on the back of their leg. They should have listened. Fourth or fifth time, they think they're smarter than dad. They think they're smarter than mom. You know what? It's time for a spanking. And don't come to me with the Journal of Pediatrics or Psychology Today or blase blah 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 blah, where all of the liberals have taken over. I have a lot of liberal thought and liberal opinions. The problem is in academia, it is no longer balanced. You don't hear a conservative voice there. And that's who runs all of these journals and ridiculousnesses of all this, oh, well, we're this board and we're that board, and we say, well, you know what? Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. You parent how you need to parent. I'll parent how I need to parent. And this is one of those times where I'm going to reference you to somebody that I listen to. His name is Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. I take what he says and I really, really hear it. And that is, I don't care what you think of my parenting. I don't care. I have to care about my children. I have to care about what kind of people they are. I have to care about whether or not they can provide for themselves. I don't have to care about what you think of my parenting. And more of us need to start being that way. You need to stop thinking and caring about what the Journal of Pediatrics, what the psychologist today, what Dr. Phil double-sided flapjack has to say. Who cares? I think we can all agree that he doesn't have the same living circumstances as 90% of us. He doesn't have the ability to intellectually comment on your life situation. He can't paint with a broad brush and say this whole thing, this answers every single scenario. There's never a reason. Well, sometimes there is a reason to spank a kid. And clearly, that's what Adrain Peterson believes. And clearly, he's okay with being the bad guy in order to make sure that his kids are good guys. And I, for one, applaud that and wish there were more people like him. All right, guys. Enough of the heavy talk. I'm going to start getting emotional or something like that. So let's go ahead and move on to some of the more fun topics today. Okay. So the most important thing, the thing you really need to know about college football, what happened this past weekend, was the devastating loss, Michigan to Ohio State. It was an annihilation. Got to give it up to the Buckeyes. I have to sit here and say I was completely wrong. I really did not see the Buckeyes putting together a game like that. That by far was the best game that Ohio State has played this season. And I think it had to be the worst game that Michigan's played this year. I don't even think they played that bad in that first half against Notre Dame. Okay, it was horrible. They just could not block. Offensive line could not keep the pressure out of Patterson's face. Wide receivers were dropping balls. Defense, Michigan, I know they had injuries, but it's got to be next man up. And they just could not put any pressure on the quarterback. They just, allowed Ohio State to have their way. Even in special teams, it just, you can't give up points on special teams like that. So, horrible, horrible loss for the Wolverines and Harbaugh. I personally feel like Harbaugh is still a much maligned head coach. I still think he's a very good head coach, one of the best head coaches in college football. And I just feel like the bar has to stop being, Nick Saban. That's an unrealistic bar, especially given the jobs that he's had. But anyhow, I digress. One of the things of note, of interest to me, is with now the assumption that Alabama will go on and defeat Georgia. It seems really ironic to me how the new talk starting Sunday and even into Monday morning is no longer about how a two-team SEC team should be in over, Notre Dame or Michigan. Interesting. Now they're talking about how is it Oklahoma or Ohio State. If you're telling me that a number 10 team can jump over a number 6 team to make it into the 4-team playoff, and somehow that number 10 team is now 5 slots better than the number 5 Georgia and the number 1 Alabama, should there be a 2-loss SEC team. But they wouldn't have been better than, but the Michigan and Notre Dame, which were both above that number 5 team, somehow would not have been. I just don't understand the logic here. I mean, there's a clear bias. They don't even try to hide it for the top Power 5 conferences. And it's the major flaw in the system. It's the major flaw. Look, the reality is that UCF should be considered to be in the championship or in the playoff. I mean, I just don't know what else there is to say about it. It's getting out of hand, the ridiculous lengths that college football will go to keep these smaller teams out of contention. I mean, what else do they have to do? I mean, they're winning in pretty dominant fashion. I think their closest game was, on the road at Memphis. They had a bit of a close game against against Navy. I mean, they're dominating. And it just is so, telling to me that they don't want UCF in the playoff. And I think the major reason why they don't want UCF in the playoff is because if you give this team a number of weeks to prepare for these vaunted top SEC, top Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12 teams, right? Power conference teams. What I think is going to happen is they're going to be competitive. And the last thing that the talking heads of college football need is for UCF to come in and make a legitimate game. UCF doesn't even have to win. They just have to make it a game. That's all they have to do, is make it a game. And if they make it a game, what does that do? It starts to tear down the idea that to make it into the NFL, to have the best shot, that you have to play for one of the top handful of schools. Because if we're really going to be honest, it's not really that the protection of the SEC. It's the protection of the top 5 to 6 teams in the SEC. It's a protection of the top 5 teams in the Big 10. It's a protection of the top 5 teams in pretty much every single one of those power conferences. It's not the protection of all the teams, because the teams that are bad are horrible and they're probably never going to get much better. Okay? But we've talked about this ad nauseum. How long does a small school have to dominate their own conference to finally get a shot? Okay? Because all they have to do is make it competitive. Even if they just make it competitive through the third quarter. Because the reality is, we all know that what's going to catch up to a school like UCF is not the starting talent, not the coaching, not the scheme. What will catch up to them playing these bigger power schools is depth. But they can never build their depth, right? The number 4 running back at Alabama is never going to choose to go to UCF if UCF never gets a shot to play Alabama. And of course, Alabama will schedule UCF probably for 2 at their place in about 3 years, when they know that, well, that's about their run time. They're going to have to reload. They'll have a bunch of young freshmen, and yeah, that's when we'll play them. And it's just ridiculously sickening that the NCAA allows this travesty to happen, because the only thing it's hurting are these kids. It's the only thing it's hurting. Well, it is kind of hurting the fan, but really it's hurting the kids because you're keeping kids off the field that otherwise should be playing on Saturday afternoon and get their shot at showcasing their talent to get their shot into the big leagues. Because let's face it, college football is the minor leagues for the NFL. Which brings us to the NFL. So I just wanted to take a second first and start off talking about Aaron Rodgers and how he just looked completely deflated as, they lost, and he was talking about his NFL mortality or his football mortality. I mean, just look at the guy. He looks really, really down. Actually, when I saw his picture, when I saw this interview, I thought he looked like an old Luke Skywalker, right? Like that old, tired Jedi that Luke Skywalker was. Yeah, I was the chosen one or was super powerful, but now I think I just want to be done with all this crap, right? But here's the deal. Basically, Aaron Rodgers is, this season's been rough, it's been tough, and, it is what it is. Now, here's the bone I have to pick with so many Aaron Rodgers fans, right? Don't get me wrong, Aaron Rodgers is an extremely exciting quarterback to watch. He does a lot of cool things on the field. That being said, I also feel like he's completely overrated. He's overrated when you try to put him into the conversation of greatest of all time. He's not the GOAT. That title squarely belongs with Tom Brady. And if not Tom Brady, it's still Joe Montana. I mean, that's just is what it is. Aaron Rodgers was the beneficiary of an amazing first couple of seasons, one Super Bowl win, and that's what he has. He's a one Super Bowl quarterback. He is a great quarterback. He is a Hall of Fame quarterback. But greatest of all time, no, that's not his title. And, I just really get tired of the people that want to elevate him to that status. That's not what he is. His winning isn't even on par with the type of winning that Ben Roethlisberger's done. And yet we don't have Ben Roethlisberger in the conversation for the greatest of all time. Aaron Rodgers is very much Brett Favre 2.0, and that's that. Aaron Rodgers, and Brett Favre share a lot of similarities. One of those similarities is that both of them have nobody to blame but themselves for their lack of winning. And they're missing, or not so much in Brett Favre's case, but very much so in Aaron Rodgers' case, the missing of time away from the field. Now, Brett Favre, I think, missed a little bit of time with the whole holdout thing when he didn't want to come back to the Green Bay Packers, retired on retired. But, Rodgers has actually missed time because of injuries. And he's missed that time because of decisions that he's made, right? He fails to throw the ball away when he should. He's not very prudent. He holds the ball too long, throws, always looking for the big throw down the field. And while that makes for exciting football, it also makes you more apt to get hit. Further, he also wanted the big contract, which he got. Tom Brady didn't. He stayed, gave the Patriots that hometown discount. So, let's just say what it is with Aaron Rodgers. It's probably time for him to hang it up. If he's getting tired and exhausted dealing with these young wide receivers, it's probably time for him to walk away. Speaking of young quarterbacks, or young players that is, what about Baker Mayfield? And some of the fire he's come under, I personally don't like it. You hear Chris Carter, Shannon Sharp, Eric Mangini, a couple other people criticizing him for his way he interacted with his ex-head coach. Look, he did the gentlemanly thing. The guy extended his hand. He shook his hand. Then he tried to go the next step, which was completely disingenuous on his part, which was try to hug Bakey. Come on, man. You know you're not that close to Baker. You had some really, not so kind words for him before the season started and, your assessment of him, right? You could have protected him. But no, you allowed whatever personal things that were going on behind the scenes with the GM, with the owner. I don't know what was going on. I'm not going to pretend I was there. But I know that you said some things that were not quite complimentary and also kind of had a backhanded kind of insinuation about Bakey. Now, people are roasting him because of what he said at the press conference. Look, people, we can't have it both ways. Okay, as football fans, as sports fans, we always want these guys to be genuine right up until their genuine personality is a personality we don't like. And then we want to whine and cry about decorum and being polite and how a quarterback is supposed to act. Look, here's the deal. And this just shows how out of touch a lot of these talking heads in the media are. They still haven't come to grips with the fact that they no longer control the narrative. Okay? They don't understand that. The reality is Baker's creating his own narrative, he's creating his own brand, and he has to market Bakey as Bakey, right? Shaky and Bakey has to market himself. That's who he has to market. And part of that is he's going to give you a genuine look at who he is as a person, his attitude. He's competitive. He's going to hold a little bit of a grudge. He's going to be a bit petty at times, but he's also going to be fun and fun-loving. And he's going to say stuff like, hey, I was young. I made mistakes. I'm still learning. That's how it goes. So I don't have issue with the way Baker Mayfield, had some choice words for his ex-head coach. I really don't. Calling into question, well, we have the same players, but we're playing different. And hey, we got somebody now that we trust as a play caller. So what do you think? I mean, isn't it refreshing? Isn't it refreshing to finally hear some players say how it is? Now, here's the thing. People don't understand, right? At some point in time, Baker's going to be, if he pans out the way that we hope that he will as Baker Mayfield fans, if he pans out and he has a long career, at some point in time he's going to come to a point where he's going to have to decide, is he going to take the Tom Brady route when it comes to pay, or is he going to take that Aaron Rodgers route when it comes to pay? And I hope, for one, that he takes the Tom Brady route for his own sake, right? It means that they can afford to give him a good defense, to give him a good offensive line, to possibly give him some weapons at wide receiver or in the backfield. But in order to make that kind of decision, you also have to make a brand like Tom Brady. Brady's brand is high dollar. When Brady does commercials, when he does spots, it's always for high dollar items. It's not the rinky dink, State Farm commercial. It's not the rinky dink, Campbell's soup commercial. It's for high dollar items, meaning that he's getting a high dollar in price. And if you notice, he also doesn't do a lot of spots. The spots are very short in runtime, okay? But to have that kind of personal brand, you have to sell yourself as being very genuine nowadays. These guys just don't get it. These old school guys just do not get it. There is a cell phone in every hand. There's a smartphone in every hand. There's a cameraman around every corner nowadays. So if you're not genuine, you're going to get exposed, and then people aren't going to like you. And that's kind of the rub that John Jones ran into when his mask came off. Now, since that time, I think he's done a very smart thing and embraced who he actually is. So I think that Bakey did exactly the right thing. And that brings us to my Dallas Cowboys. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan unabashedly. I'll be honest, they have really surprised me and proven me wrong. And I'm very happy to be proven wrong with the way that Amari Cooper has come in and performed. the way that Dak has started to trust and throw Amari open, throwing into tight windows, something I did not think Dak would do. Cowboys are putting together now a 3-game winning streak. They're going up against the Saints. In my opinion, they don't even have to win that game. All they have to do is make it close to keep that confidence and that momentum going, because everybody knows that the Saints are playing at the high level. Everybody knows that basically, the Saints are going to be in the mix for the NFC Championship, right? So they just have to keep it close. Which brings me to the head coach, Jason Garrett. In my opinion, the most underrated, most maligned head coach, unjustly maligned head coach in all of pro football. People don't give Jason Garrett the credit he deserves. Look at what he really has. He has a solid defense, a good defense. Not an all-star, not a dominating, not a super powerful defense, a good, solid defense. But he has them performing right now. He has a limited quarterback. Right now, if we're being honest about Dak's skill set is limited. He's still growing, okay? He had almost no weapons at wide receiver. No legitimate deep threats. He made it happen to get a deep threat and then integrated him. Basically saved Amari Cooper's season. If you look at Amari Cooper's performance prior to getting to the Cowboys, it's not that great. And that's why some people thought he was going to be a bust and that they paid too much for him. Right now, it looks like that first round pick, as of right now, if you had to grade that trade, was it worth a first round pick? It would have to be most definitely, because he's as good or better than anybody they could have drafted next year at the wide receiver position. He's got Ezekiel Elliott getting involved in not just the run game, but also the passing game. He has found a way to get this limited offense, this offense that is not what is trending in the NFL, which is that high caliber, throw the football all over the field offense. He has found a way to get this very old school, smash mouth style of offense to generate points, to generate offense, and to win 3 games in a row. Okay? I really feel Jason Garrett never gets the credit he's due. Even now, in the midst of a 3-game winning streak, you don't hear anybody backing away from the talk of firing Jason Garrett or backtracking or saying, hey, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I didn't know what I was talking about. Maybe they did need some pieces. Okay? And it looks like the Cowboy defense is going to add some depth as people get healthy. The Cowboy offensive line is going to add some depth as people get healthy. And that's really what's been the Achilles heel of the Cowboys over the last couple of years, is that they've gotten old, they've gotten nicks, they've gotten injuries, and guys weren't able to come back because they just did not have the depth. Now, right now, they're weathering the storm in the defense and actually shining without Sean Lee in the middle of the field. So if the Cowboys can keep it close, score around 30 points, keep it within a single score with the Saints coming up on Thursday, they should be able to continue that momentum and win the NFC East. If they have that mentality and that confidence of, hey, we can play with the Saints, they could be dangerous. They could be dangerous. Let's see how that chemistry keeps working out with Dak and Amari. I think they got to start getting Cole Beasley back involved. He's kind of been quiet for the last game and a half or so. Got to get him back into the mix of things. Of course, Michael Gallup looks like he's starting to really develop as well. Who knows? Maybe Dak starts to develop too. Best thing I think the Cowboys could do right now, reach out to Tony Romo, see if maybe he would be interested in coming down, spending some time with Dak, reminding him why he was able to unseat Romo. Maybe giving those pointers again about, hey, remember your film study. Remember how guys like the ball. You can do this, right? Reaching out to Tony Romo as a, pseudo quarterback coach. Okay, guys, so that brings us to UFC. So UFC Fight Night went down. Surprisingly to me, Ngannou defeated Curtis Blades. Actually, I believe it was about a 45-second fight. So it's kind of hard to really analyze everything that happened in the fight and really say whether or not it was a strategy or a trend. But it looked like Ngannou was much more patient, kept at a kicking distance, so to speak, staying far enough away that it wasn't an easy shot for Blades, making him have to come forward, which allowed Ngannou to counter. Now, I don't know if this is going to be a new tactic or a new strategy for Ngannou to use that he's going to implement in his game from now on, trying to catch people coming in. But, it seemed to have worked this time. Now, what does this mean impact-wise on the heavyweight division? Well, what that means is that Ngannou has now been thrust into the conversation of what fights are available for DC. As I stated before, DC is the one who's been on the record of saying that he's wanting to fight for payday and legacy. If he's fighting for legacy, the clear number one fight to take if Jon Jones were to win and be willing to move up to heavyweight would be to fight Jon Jones. The next fight for legacy would be to rematch Stipe. And then now the next legacy fight would be Ngannou. Now, of those three, I think that everybody would agree that the biggest money-making fight would be Jon Jones. So if DC is being honest with us when he says he wants to fight for legacy and for money, then clearly the fight he should be pushing for, the fight that he should be hoping works out, is a Jon Jones DC Part 3. If that for some reason is not on the table, the next two for legacy, being Stipe and Ngannou, are both going to be good selling pay-per-views. Okay, Stipe routinely draws over 300,000 pay-per-view buys as the champion. I'm sure he would do that in the rematch against Daniel. If Ngannou were to challenge, I think people would also buy that. Why? Because people are going to want to see if Ngannou has learned his lesson as far as the wrestling from being beat up by Stipe. Also, we've seen DC be caught by a heavy puncher and rocked when he fought Rumble Johnson. Now, if he catches a flush shot from Ngannou, like the flush shot he got caught with from Rumble, that night is over. And since we've seen that, that means that there may be some interest. I think he could get to 300,000 plus pay-per-views against Ngannou. The next one that's a money fight, of course, is against Brock. But if we're going to be honest, Brock is a freak show. That's the only reason why he sells. There's some crossover appeal from WWE fans. But in all reality, everybody knows Brock has the 1 in 10 or 1 in 99 shot, if we want to be more honest about it, to beat DC. Okay? DC's MMA wrestling is better. His striking, his boxing, his all-around game is just at a much higher level than Brock Lesnar. And that's just being honest. So those are the fights I think that we might see for DC coming up in the future. Those are the only fights that really make sense if you look at the rankings. So we'll see what happens. Next, during the Ngannou fight, during that weekend, it came out that Israel Adesanya will be facing Anderson Silva. This is a super exciting fight if Anderson can recapture any of his old form, right? I think Israel came out and said, this is like LeBron James versus Michael Jordan. Now, I think that's a pretty apt description, because the reality is at this point in their careers, I think Adesanya is younger, quicker, stronger, faster, a more dynamic striker. I think that Adesanya, this should be a passing of the torch for that flashy style of fighter in this weight division. Okay, there should be a passing of the torch that, hey, Anderson saying, you are now the flashy guy in this division that knocks people out. That should be a super fun fight to watch. So guys, that's going to wrap up the show for the most part, but look for the standalone videos I'm going to be doing. I want to do a standalone video breaking down the Holly Holm fight versus Cyborg, because I think that's going to give us some insight as to why Cyborg is going to have some trouble in her title defense. And then we're going to start doing, probably try and do 2 standalone videos, one for Brian Ortega and one for Max Holloway, kind of breaking down what they both do, why they present problems to each other, and what problems they can give one another. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for listening. This has been the Red Pill Sports Show, of course, brought to you by Open Source Self-Defense, Fitness, and Grappling. Remember, be practical, be purposeful, get fit with a purpose. We'll catch you all later. Remember to take your red pill.